The observation deck of the celestial meridian hummed with the usual symphony of alien life. Nia stood before the reinforced glass enclosure, her datapad forgotten in her hand as she watched the small creature huddle in the corner. Rauk, they called him, a juvenile Kreshtar, one of the galaxy's apex predators. His species had conquered 17 star systems through sheer ferocity alone, yet this particular cub looked anything but fierce. The Kreshtar were magnificent beings. Adults stood nearly 3 meters tall, their obsidian scales reflecting light like liquid midnight, their 6 eyes capable of perceiving across 12 different spectrums. They were born hunters engineered by evolution itself to dominate. But Rauk was dying. He still won't eat? Captain Veldris asked, his translator collar rendering his clicks and whistles into comprehensible standard. The insectoid officer's antennae drooped with concern. Nia shook her head. 72 hours now. The medical team says his vitals are weakening. Rauk had been rescued from a destroyed colony ship 3 weeks prior. He was the sole survivor, found clutching the body of what the crew assumed was his mother. Since then, despite the station's best efforts, the cub had refused every meal offered to him. The xenobiologists had tried everything: fresh prey, synthesized nutrients, even pheromone therapy. Nothing worked. We may need to consider forced feeding, Veldris said quietly. No. Nia's voice carried the firmness of someone who had made up their mind. That would traumatize him further. There has to be another way. She had been observing Rauk for days, watching his behavior, cataloging his movements. Humans had a reputation in the Galactic Council. They were the strange newcomers who bonded with anything, who saw potential companions in the galaxy's most unlikely creatures. Other species found it baffling. Nia found it natural. That evening she requested permission to enter Rauk's enclosure. Absolutely not, Dr. Shemeth, the head xenobiologist, said flatly. His 4 eyes blinked in asynchronous horror. Even juveniles have been known to— I've read the reports, Nia interrupted. I know the risks. Then you know that Kreshtar cubs have killed trained handlers before. Their instincts are hardwired for violence. Their instincts are hardwired for survival, Nia corrected. And right now his survival instinct is telling him that nothing here is safe, including the food. After an hour of argument and signed waivers, Nia stood inside the enclosure. The space was designed to mimic a Kreshtar den: rough stone walls, dim lighting, temperature controlled to their homeworld specifications. Rauk watched her from his corner, all 6 eyes tracking her movement. His scales, which should have gleamed with health, appeared dull and lifeless. Nia sat down cross-legged on the floor, making herself small and non-threatening. She had brought 2 bowls, one filled with the nutrient paste the station had been offering Rauk, another with human food from the commissary. She placed both between them and waited. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Rauk didn't move. Nia picked up her bowl and with exaggerated motions began to eat. She made sounds of satisfaction, humming softly as she chewed. It felt ridiculous, performative, but she had seen Earth documentaries about orphaned animals. Sometimes they needed to learn behavior from others. Sometimes they needed to see that eating was safe. Rauk's head tilted slightly. One of his eyes focused more intently on her. Nia continued her performance. She pretended to savor each bite, made small noises of contentment, even licked her fingers clean when she finished. Then, with deliberate slowness, she pushed the second bowl, Rauk's bowl, a few centimeters closer to him. The cub's nostrils flared. His scales rippled with uncertain colors. Then Nia did something that would later be debated in xenopsychology courses across the galaxy. She took a small amount of the nutrient paste from Rauk's bowl, pretended to eat it, and made the same satisfied sounds she had made with her own food. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with movements so subtle she almost missed them, Rauk began to inch forward. His claws clicked softly against the stone floor. His eyes never left Nia's face. He stopped at the bowl. His long forked tongue emerged, tasting the air. Every muscle in his body coiled with tension, ready to bolt at the slightest threat. Nia held perfectly still, barely breathing. Rauk's tongue touched the paste. He recoiled slightly, then tried again. This time he took a small amount into his mouth. His scales flickered through a spectrum of colors: uncertainty, confusion, and then finally something that might have been relief. He began to eat. Tears pricked at Nia's eyes, but she didn't move. She watched as the cub, this infant apex predator who had been starving himself in grief and fear, slowly consumed his meal. When he finished, he looked up at her, and for the first time, his scales showed a faint shimmer of their natural luster. Outside the enclosure, the observation team stood in stunned silence. "Impossible," Dr. Shemeth whispered. "Kreshtar cubs don't learn feeding behavior socially. They're solitary hunters from birth." Captain Veldris's antennae stood straight up in amazement. "Then how—" "Because," Naya said softly through her comm unit, still not breaking eye contact with Rauk. "He's not a hunter right now. He's a child who lost his mother, and children across every species I've ever known need to see that the world can be safe again. They need someone to show them." Rauk took a tentative step closer to Nia, then another. Finally, he pressed his small body against her side, his scales warming at the contact. A deep, rumbling sound emerged from his chest, the Kreshtar equivalent of a purr. The humans had done it again. They had looked at one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators and seen something no one else had. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a frightened child who needed someone to eat first, to show him that it was safe to live again. As Nia gently stroked Rauk's scales, she smiled. In a universe of 1,000,000 species, perhaps humanity's true strength wasn't their technology or their adaptability. Perhaps it was their stubborn, seemingly irrational insistence on seeing the person inside the predator. And sometimes that made all the difference.